my daughter Barley. Thanks for tuning in. I'm filming this while my son naps. And I thought I would just take this opportunity to film an intro for this video. So, Mussar for moms. I got this idea because I found this book. I found this book, The Spiritual Practice of Good Actions, Finding Balance in the Soul Traits of Mussar. And I actually found this book at one of those like little libraries, the free libraries at a local park. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. You don't like usually find Jewish books. So I of course grabbed it. And Mussar, Barley, can you relax? So I had heard the term Mussar before, but I really had no idea what it meant. It was just sort of one of those Jewish terms that you hear. And I never really gave it much more thought. But as I dug into this book, I got super curious and interested, and it was like very much right up my alley. It's about self-reflection and journaling and the inner world. So I'm all about that. I'm gonna let my dog out really quick. Yeah, so I started reading this and earmarking it. And then actually he references the author, Greg Marcus. I'll put a link to this, but he references the book Everyday Holiness. And if I remember right, he said that was actually his teacher from like the American Mussar Institute. So I was like, okay. And I went ahead and I got the audio book on Audible of Everyday Holiness. That's kind of been my primary resource for Mussar studies since then. I think I got through the first three, or no, more like the first 6 chapters in here. And then I switched over to Everyday Holiness just because I'm a busy mom and audiobooks is mostly how I consume content. I really like it. I definitely highly recommend. Anyways, so Mussar. What is Mussar? This is an old tradition, and I think in this book he compares it to Kabbalah, like a form of mysticism, which I thought was interesting. But it's basically a way to examine your soul traits, and try and be a better person. I'm way oversimplifying here, but that's the gist. And I guess I should talk about my background, or my credentials, or lack thereof. So I got my bachelor's degree in religious studies, and I had an emphasis in biblical Hebrew. So I studied rabbinic literature, and yeah, I'm definitely a Bible or a biblical Hebrew nerd a little bit. So I have an interest in that, but actually most of my undergraduate studies, I was more interested in learning about the Eastern religions and philosophies. So I really like learning about Taoism. I've read a lot in the recent years about Zen Buddhism, and just sort of, maybe not religious practice, but Eastern philosophies too, like yoga and meditation. Although of course Jewish meditation is that whole other thing. Maybe I'll do a video on that. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. So I've just been kind of a student of spirituality, I guess you could say. I love all of it, and I'm open to all of it. And I think there's little bits of truth in all of it. And I will say that Mussar and the self-examination, in some ways it's kind of opposite to a lot of the other religious ideologies. It's kind of weird for me to even consider Eastern religions in some ways, because I really think of them a lot more like a philosophy. But with Zen Buddhism and with Taoism, it's more about just like being in the here and now and not overthinking things, and just like be a good person and be who you are, and you know, don't overthink it. And I love that. This is kind of the opposite of that in my opinion. It's being very hypercritical, and I'd say this is more my nature. So I kind of have to, when I'm getting a little bit too in my head, and you know, as we do, I should kind of draw on the things I've learned about Zen and things I've learned about Taoism, and that kind of helps me back off a little bit. But I think it's good to explore both ends and do what you will. So yeah, I guess that's a little bit about me. I'm drinking some sage tea. I'm gonna chat with you just like mom to mom, sister to sister, friend to friend. But yeah, it's like 4 o'clock and I try and not have any more caffeine after 2. And Barley, stop. I got this sage tea blend from Mountain Rose Herbs, which is a local Eugene company, but they're like nationally or internationally known and they ship everywhere. So I will link that. I actually got this to help dry up my breast milk because I heard that that can help. But yeah, now I just have a ton of sage tea. So I had to think of it like smudging sage, but like an inner smudging of my soul. I always feel very cleansed, and I put a little honey or agave in it, and it is really tasty. It tastes very earthy and healthy. I'm not usually a tea person. I'm definitely a coffee person, but I like this sage tea. All right, are you gonna come in, Riley? Yes. I consider myself a baby herbalist, and there's definitely really cool, like ancient herbs and scents in the Bible, but I'm just really, I love that, so I don't know where I was going with that, but spirituality. I think herbs play into spirituality. Okay, so Mussar traits. This book focuses on 13, and Everyday Holiness has 18 that it lists. I think they say there's actually like 50 or 100 or like almost 200 soul traits listed in all of the Mussar texts, the rabbinic texts. But the reason I think that this book went with 13, it might be like the traditional 13 that one of the rabbis, I'll insert his name here, recommended, but basically you study one soul trait at a time for a week, and you journal on it, reflect on it, and you just like really focus and become a master in that soul trait, is how it was referred to in the Everyday Holiness book. But so yeah, you do that for 13 weeks, and then you start the cycle over again, and so you'll actually get 4 weeks throughout the year. So you get to go through the cycle 4 times if you pick 13 soul traits to focus on. But you can go with more. He doesn't recommend going with more. You could do less, which is kind of where I'm leaning towards. But I think it's interesting to look at the soul traits. And yeah, I like the idea of getting through 13 throughout the year. That seems like a lot of self-growth. Okay, let's dig in here. Some highlights. The thing I wish that this book did include was a little bit more Hebrew. Knowing my background as like a biblical Hebrew nerd, I'm like, I just want to know what the that was part of the reasons why I went to the Everyday Holiness, and I was like Googling about Mussar. I wanted to know the Hebrew names. So Anava is humility, the first one they talk about. This soul trait, humility. Okay, so in our culture, Western culture, we kind of think of humility as equating with humbleness and not wanting to be arrogant. And the Torah's take on it is a little bit different. Humility is not taking up too much space, but also not diminishing yourself and not taking up enough space, if that makes sense. So the story, they talk about one rabbi who he says, I have the wit of 1,000 men, or I have the intellect of 1,000 men. So therefore my responsibility is that of 1,000 men. And it ties into actually, responsibility is another one of the soul traits that was mentioned in Everyday Holiness, and I don't think it's in this one, but I think it's an important one. I digress. Humility, yeah. The second one is patience. I think that most people would say they need to work on patience. They talk about having too much of this trait would be like almost laziness or just apathy, letting, just never taking any initiative to make things better because you're like overly patient. You're like, oh, maybe it'll change, maybe it won't. And too little patience is, just being impatient. And I'm raising my hand big over here. I don't know if it's because I'm an Aries or overly enthusiastic, which is another one of the soul traits, enthusiasm, but my patience is not good. It's not a strong suit. So it's something I definitely need to focus on, especially in motherhood. Oh yeah, that's a good thing I should bring up. I think it's great to study these things. Obviously, for yourself, you have to start with knowing yourself. But I, as a new mom of like an almost 2-year-old, and I'm watching him become this little person, it's as important to me, maybe not as important, but like right under there. Like, I want to study these traits in him and how can I better parent his soul to develop these soul traits. And I really like that way of looking at it. That's not really like a parenting technique I've heard much about, but obviously it's really important to me. So I feel like I'm not the only mom who cares about my child's soul and raising good little humans. Like, that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this whole Sunday school channel, and you know, lots of reasons. Okay, weird intro, but fun to talk to you. My neighbor's blowing his leaves, so I don't know if I'm going to use any of this, but I thought I would just keep chatting with you because I'm enjoying it. So why are you talking about breast milk in a Mussar video? I think that gets back to one of my core soul traits is truthfulness. Truth, Emmett. It's important to me. Like, I've never been super comfortable with white lies. They make me feel really icky. I remember at my last job, I was having really bad period cramps and I just couldn't lie about it. I'm like, I'm just in pain. I just need to go home. Sorry. You know, she obviously was so cool. Yeah, I think I'm really annoyed with the fakeness in a lot of our society. It grosses me out, actually. That's just me though. Yeah, okay, so things that I'm naturally I did this nice little like diagram here. I think I'm naturally an enthusiastic person. Truth is important to me. I don't know if I'm naturally grateful, but I've had a strong gratitude practice for a long time. I think the first like spiritual book I read was The Secret, of course, you know, in the 90s, being 13 or whatever when it came out. And I was not in a great place, as most teenagers aren't. And that whole idea of like being a magnet and just being a, you know, there's a lot of problems with the book, but I think that there's a lot of truth in the book. And being grateful. I've been practicing that since maybe, you know, when I was a teenager. And now it comes pretty easily to me. I feel very grateful for a lot of blessings that I have. Okay. I'm going super out of order here. I'm just gonna go through the list in this book and, oh yeah, no, I wanted to shout out Dan Barnett makes these mugs that you may have seen in all of my videos, and his wife Miriam just subscribed to my channel, so they're amazing. And he's this really talented ceramicist who lives in Washington, and I should link to him. They do really great philanthropy work, and he like made a bunch of mugs and sold them for like, I don't know, they're just like awesome people. So if you're obsessed with these mugs, because I am, go and check that out. Hi Miriam, if you're watching this. Okay, where was I? Humility. I think I teeter-totter in between being like full of myself or self-debasing. I can be both, I think. I don't know, I feel like I'm pretty middle of the road here. Like, I step up to the plate when it's necessary, and I'm not afraid to be like, yeah, I'm a freaking baller at that. Like, celebrate yourself. And I'm also really hypercritical of myself and get down in the dumps on myself pretty hard. So yeah, I think I'm kind of extremely all over the place in the humility aspect. Patience, I already said, not a super strong suit of mine. Definitely could work on my patience. Enthusiasm, yeah, I have a lot of enthusiasm. Usually. I think that's just a natural personality trait. A natural soul trait of mine. I get really excited about things and I start them and I don't always have the patience to finish them, so or just like jump in head first. And yeah, like I said, I really need to work on my patience. That's okay. You know, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. Trust. I don't know, I need to look at this one more, reread the chapters. I do have trust, and faith was the other one that isn't in this book, but faithfulness. I think trust and faithfulness are really closely tied, and I remember when I was listening to those chapters in Everyday Holiness, I was like, what's the difference between having trust in God or having faith in God? I need to explore that topic. Compassion is one of the traits in Everyday Holiness that isn't in this book, but I liked that in Everyday Holiness he referenced compassion as like the feeling a mother has towards their child, and it's just this like overwhelming love and just the ultimate grace. You know, you just see your child in the ultimate light, and that doesn't mean that they're not, you know, nobody's perfect, but you just love them for exactly who they are, and you wouldn't change that. Just nurture that, if that makes sense. I think, I don't know, I'm just talking. I'm just being honest, truthful. Silence, equanimity, calmness. I try my best to stay calm, and I run a lot to get out my excess enthusiasm and energy, and try and help me be a little patient before I just jump the gun on something. Let me go on a run and think about it. I really admire, like I can think of some coworkers or just people in my life who seem to really like embody silence and calmness, and I'm just like, I really respect them and revere them. I'm like, I think it's because it's not in my nature to be that way that it's so attractive to me. I'm like, oh, you just seem so at peace. And who doesn't want to feel at peace? I want to feel at peace. We all want to feel at peace. Yeah. That. Mussar for Moms. Journaling prompts and text study guide. And a drawing from my son. I love how much he loves pink. I'm really trying to encourage that. These are the questions that I just did handwritten for the first one, Anava, humility. I just asked myself how this shows up for me in general, how this shows up in my parenting, what I observe of this trait in my son, and how can I lovingly parent my child towards balance in this trait? Great questions. I also added in some subsequent ones, who are examples of people in my life that embody this quality. Because I think having an actual personal example for yourself can be an inspiring thing to meditate on. Also email Shmuel the Camel if you want some free stickers. My husband ordered these and surprised me, and they aren't very bright. I like Shmuel showing up a little bit brighter, but we have some extras, so if you want them and your kiddo maybe wants them, I'd be happy to send them to you as a thank you for watching my rants on YouTube. Where was I going with that? Mussar. Do you want examples of what I've been finding for myself? I kind of started to talk about it, but maybe I'll go a little more in depth. Okay. So humility, talked about that one. Patience, talked about that one. Enthusiasm, talked about that one. Trust, like I said, I need to go back and study this a little more. Keep in mind, I've been studying this for maybe like a month and a half, 6 weeks. Sounds about right. And this is like a year-long practice, so it's kind of speaking to my lack of patience that I'm publishing this video now, but I want to get it out there because I don't even know if I'm gonna be YouTubing at the end of this year. I'm kind of doing this in the 2020 weird pandemic thing, so I'm like, just put it out there. And it's not done, or I mean, it's not perfect and whatever. It's out there. Okay, trust, need to go back to it. Loving kindness, Gamula Tasidim, that's one of the, I actually did a Sunday school episode that talked about that as the phrase of the week. And I think that I'm pretty good in this category. I don't know, maybe middle. Could do more. Definitely not like completely lacking it though, so feel good about that. Truth, like I said, truth is pretty important to me. Honor, kavod, respect. I think I have room to grow here, for sure. I don't know how much I want to get into here, but I think as I've gotten a little bit older, you know, at the ripe age of 30, I have a lot more respect for people in general. Like, nobody's perfect. That's the whole point of this book. Nobody's perfect, and just seeing the divine spark in everyone I meet. Try to, at least. But I wouldn't say that it was like super instilled in me, or just like a really important value that I placed, or I don't know. I definitely have room to grow, you know? I didn't come from like a military background where like respect is really important, or I don't know, I think some cultures are better at honoring their ancestors, or yeah, honor. It's an interesting one. Gratitude, I kind of talked about that I have a pretty strong gratitude practice, and I do feel very grateful for all the blessings in my life. So if I were to only choose 7 traits to study for like the year, I think I would not focus on gratitude, just because that's already so ingrained, so, which is good. I do think it's a practice. I don't think, like I said, I don't think it comes, the leaf blowing just stopped. Order, this is a funny one. Order as in like, the way it was taught in Everyday Holiness is like kind of having a clean space, having a set way of doing things, sticking to a schedule, and this creates room for soul growth, I guess, and creativity. I definitely think this is important and true. Like, I cannot focus when the house is a mess. I love the whole minimalism thing. Like, I read Marie Kondo and I was like, yes, get rid of things, get rid of things. And I think minimalism is kind of a hot topic right now, but I totally resonate with it, and I think it's true. And like, less is more. It helps you keep your house in order when you have less things. Like, my baby's awake, so I'll have to pause. Coming, honey. Hi. Hi. Okay. I wanted to pick up where we left off when my son woke up from his nap. My husband got back from his run, and I was gonna skip my run today, but I was inspired by him to get out the door. And it made me think of responsibility, which is one of the soul traits. And so yeah, I'm just parked outside by the track. I'm gonna go get it done. I drove because I didn't want to deal with any hills. The achrayut, the soul trait of responsibility. As a working mom, I have a lot of responsibilities. And I also have a responsibility to myself. And running is one of the self-care items that's kind of a non-negotiable for me, and I've learned that about myself. Yeah, it's so much. I feel a responsibility with my work. I feel a responsibility, blah, 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 blah. But I also feel a responsibility to take care of myself, and I know that I'm going to feel better after this run, so just a little bit of vlog style. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say is I was following a training plan for the summer, and I would log my runs, because the only time I could actually fill out my spreadsheet was right after my run. It felt like I would
So I would in my trunk actually and fill out my log. And one of the practices of Mussar that they suggest is having a daily diary. So you could keep it at your bedside. But if you're like me and you're really tired by the time you're going to sleep after putting the kid to sleep or whatever, you can't really find a spare moment to yourself, maybe after your run. That's my time. So I think I'm gonna actually put my journal in my trunk and like make that a thing. I've thought that multiple times on the run. I'm like, I wish I had my journal and my hydration pack so I could just like jot down my thoughts right now. Anyways, I'm stalling. I just don't want to run. All right, talk to you later. Bye. Okay, just got done with my run, 3 miles, feeling great. Things that I thought about on the run towards the end on the Mussar track. How the traits bleed into each other. It's touched on in both of the books. But I was thinking about when I left off, I just talked about honor and how I could use a little more of it. And an example of that is how I can't remember any of the rabbis' names. And like really I should be attributing, you know, it's kind of disrespectful of me to just be like that rabbi. Not cool. Not perfect. Working on it. And I was thinking about forgiveness, which is one of the traits in Everyday Holiness, not in the other book, I think. Just how, like, I hope that Ben can forgive me for the times that I slip up and lose my cool or whatever, and not holding on to grudges with family members. So yeah, I was thinking about responsibility on the way and on the way out, and now I'm thinking about forgiveness and how forgiveness and honor ties into humility, just forgiving yourself for not being perfect. I'm pretty hard on myself. I would say that's true. Anyways, go take care of yourself. Go on a run, study some books, do something nice for yourself. You're great. Everything is awesome. Bye.
Morning. Wanted to follow up on a few things and just close out this Mussar for Moms video. And I wanted to clarify something that I said in the beginning about how this book compares Mussar to Kabbalah. And I looked back and the author made a distinction that Kabbalah is spiritual mystical and Mussar is spiritual practical. So I wanted to say that. And my son is working on his breakfast of eggs and yogurt and banana, some cereal. Yum, yum, yum. Closing thoughts about Mussar from Everyday Holiness. Oh no. Oh no. It says basically that Mussar won't cause a lot of outward changes. It's all about the inner world. So you may be like, what's the point of even doing this? But you'll start to realize shifts in how you react to things. And I would say this has been true for me. I have a lot of work deadlines coming up. Just things that would have really stressed me out 2 months ago. I'm able to kind of take a step back and look at my thoughts, see my thought patterns, and act in the way that I want to act. So still, you know, making time to serve my son a hot breakfast. Not feeling guilty that I need to clean the house before I get to the work. Little things. Just little things that make a really big difference in my inner world, I guess. So I think that's all I have for this video. I hope you got something out of it. Let me know in the comments. Usually the comments are turned off because most of my videos are marked for kids, but I think that you should be able to comment on this video. Let me know if you found this interesting, helpful. I definitely, both books say that Mussar can be applied to Jewish people, non-Jewish people. It's just a cool tactic to use to do a little self-examination. So yeah, let me know if you liked this video. If you did, like, subscribe, please. That helps the channel. And I would love to know which traits you think that you're naturally great at, which ones you think you want to focus on. Let's just start chatting in the comments. So thanks so much for watching. It really means a lot, and it's why I create this. So hopefully you got something out of it. All right, love you. Bye.